Good morning for the West Coasters. Good afternoon for the for the East Coasters.
All
this
at the East Coast.
this is Steve Lawrence, and I am so happy to be on here with him. And before we go right into the interview, I want to talk a little bit about who this young man is. And I can say young man because everybody is younger than me. Steve, for the past 12 years, has lived and taught in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and China. Upon deciding to become an international teacher, Steve acquired a bachelor's in social studies education and eventually a master's in technology integration in education. Steve is currently completing the clinical psychology PhD program at Saybrook University with a focus in transpersonalism and meditative practice as treatment. Prior to becoming a teacher, Steve was introduced to meditation at the American Meditation Institute in upstate New York. Once a teacher, it was clear to him how meditative practice belong in education. So Steve immediately set out to share these ideas with his students and colleagues. Since then, the One Pointed Mind workshop has grown to include a range of topics being shared in teaching workshops in 7 countries and 13 schools. So without further ado, please let me introduce to you one of my classmates from Saybrook University, Steve Lawrence. Hey,
And a dear friend. And a dear friend.
and a dear friend. Much,
Yeah.
much love. So
Mm.
please welcome Steve. And we all know that what I'm doing right now, I'm sharing knowledge and I'm finding like-minded people who are studying mind and body and are doing the mind and body practices. And I want the world to know that there are different tools and techniques and there's hope in healing and getting well. And so that is the purpose of me coming on once a week and sharing with you the different persons and people that are doing it out there. It's all about the acting. It's not about the thinking. It's all about the acting and carrying out repeatedly that behavior to develop that new you or that strong you. So, Steve, without further ado, Steve is going to do an introductory guided meditation with us. So, if you are not driving or operating on the table or something, please find a safe space to sit or lay down or stand and follow through with listening with what Steve has to say. Steve?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. So I think we'll just start with if you're laying down, you can lay down. That's perfectly fine. Just have your head, neck, and trunk straight. So if you're laying down, maybe laying your back would be best. If you're sitting up, we're not trying to sit like soldiers, but we're sitting up and alert. Our head, neck, and trunk are straight. Feet are flat on the floor in front of us, and just hands just comfortably on the lap. Doesn't need to be overthought. Eyes are gently closed. Mouth is gently closed. Teeth are barely touching. Muscles around the eyes relaxed. The scalp relaxed. Around the ears, the neck and throat. Jaw muscles, lips, chin. Moving to the shoulders, down the arms to the elbows, the wrists, the hands, and the fingertips. Relaxed. The chest and the belly. The hips, the thighs, knees, calves, ankles, feet, and toes. It's just awareness. From the toes to the hips, become aware of the legs. Include the belly and the chest, and the arms, the neck and throat, face and head. Now from the crown to the soles of the feet, it's just awareness. We're moving into feeling. Under the mind, bring your awareness to the breath and how the breath moves in and moves the body, how the breath goes out and moves the body. Observe how breathing happens. The movement of the body happens. The movement of the mind happens. And you are the observer, the seer, the feeler. Now extend the inhalation, 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. Fully in, 4, 5, and out, gently and smooth. 4, 5, in for 10. Smooth. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and let it go. Let the face relax. 10 seconds out. Move through the body and the arms, the legs. 9, 10. In for 15. You got it. You can do it. In. Fall in. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and gently out, nice and smooth, no push. The mind moves and questions the ability. Just stay with the smooth exhalation. Count down. Okay. With the eyes closed. Again, become aware of the body and the position of the body, the sounds of the room, and the feeling of the space. Again, survey the body and the feeling from the feet to the crown. And give yourself 3 full breaths, your own pace. And in the third exhalation, you'll open your eyes gently. And with the eyes open, don't move quite yet. Become aware of the body. Become aware of the breath. Become aware of the space, the inner world and the outer world. And lovingly go about your day.
Well, thank you so much. That was beautiful. I um I felt a lot of movement in my my chest area and my head
Mm,
moving, a lot of movement, and my legs just felt light, like I'm just hanging somewhere.
nice.
That was beautiful. I hope you guys take advantage of that. I immediately went into that space, and for those of you who are not used to meditation, it takes practice. But once you practice meditation, you can go into that space of awareness really really quick. So that was a beautiful guided meditation. I couldn't have done it any better, Steve.
See, it's simple though, right? Like really, it's not. It's a simple process. The reason I like that meditation a lot. I'll actually do like an abbreviation of that before I eat. You can like
Mm,
once you get used to surveying the body, like you can click into the body pretty quick, right?
mm-hmm.
In the guided process, it's more about let me make sure that I go through each space just so I'm moving. But with experience, like within 4 seconds, you can be completely engaged in the body, relaxed, right? Um,
Right.
but then with the 5 second inhalation, 5 second exhalation, 10 in, 10 out, 15 in, 15 out, that's 1 minute. It's a
Wow.
beautiful 1 minute meditation. So you can use the breath as the count. And while you're working with the breathing, you're relaxing the body and you're going through the body points as the counting happens in the background from the stillness. The count comes from inside. It's not in the mind. You hear the count inside of you,
Mm.
in the space, in the void. The sound comes from, I don't know, someplace, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, from stillness.
That is totally so good. One of the classes I took a couple of years ago at Saybrook was about nutrition and about really feeling the food as it goes through.
Mm.
So if you do this meditation right before you eat, this is a really good way to connect to the body, to the mind, and what's going on. And then when you put that food in your body, you can see it go in, nourish, breaking down, and serving your body for its purpose. Because a lot of people who are dieting have trouble losing the weight because they're like, oh, I'm going to gain weight right before they put it in their mouth. That's what their subconscious mind is saying. But if you can get in contact with yourself before eating and say some positive stuff, then that's the chemical release. That positive chemical release of hormones will come from your body. Am
Mm.
I on the right track there, Steve?
Yeah, well, I think my mother visited last week, and it was nice to be able to get back. Like, that's my prayer, I guess, before eating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that process, it changes sometimes depending on how I feel, the mood, the movement. But getting back to my childhood prayers before eating while my mom was in town, we would go back to holding hands. She visited me in my home here, and
Mm-hmm.
just a simple prayer. Just use this food for nourishment to be your vehicle, just something simple. And it puts you out of that hasty, I'm just eating because it's the next thing I need to do before I move on to whatever I need to move on to. You stop and you're slowing down and you're calibrating before you ingest the food. And it's sacred and it's beautiful. It doesn't need to be too much. You know what I mean? It doesn't need to be a big woo woo thing. It's just, but science is showing it. It's interesting. And you're
Yeah.
calmer, if nothing else. You're more peaceful. You're more present with the people you're eating with, and you're more present with the food. You know.
Mm. Ashe. Ashe means I completely spiritually, energetically believe and agree with you. That's
Ashe.
so true. Hey, everyone, if you are watching on Facebook and you want to ask a question, you can make a comment because we can see the comment on StreamYard. And so if you have any questions while you're watching, please just write it in the comments section and we'll do it. Steve, I want to go back to your bio. There's a couple of things that stuck out to me. First of all, you taught in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and China. Tell me about that phase of your life.
Well, I was a plumber in upstate New York before I became a teacher, and I met my wife and her sister and brother-in-law, and they started to talk about how they were international teachers, and it utterly blew my mind. I was 26 at the time, and I was in a spot in a place where life just kind of happened, and I would sit back and to really question like what choices have I actually made, and where like I'm doing a conscious choice where I'm going to head that direction rather than simply responding to the circumstances of life, telling myself the whole time that I'm actually making a decision. I'm not really making a decision, right? It's
Mm,
like you want to eat or don't eat, you eat, right? that,
yeah.
that seemed like the way life was up to that point, and I felt disconnected and wayward, and I didn't know I didn't know what end was up, um,
Right.
but anyway, I at 26, I decided to be a teacher, and that's when I went and got the undergrad work here in upstate New York, while I ran my plumbing business. Then going into Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Each one was actually unique in its own way, though they're all Muslim countries, of course. There was an interesting element to it. There was a boy, it's long. It's a deep question, really. But for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, I mean, just being able to work with the students in those areas. If I could keep it on the track of what we're discussing here with the work of meditation, and
Mm-hmm.
so I started to teach in Kuwait, and the question that I was confronted with was, I want to integrate meditative practices into this classroom, but primarily they're all Muslim students, and they're in a culture where they're very suspicious, rightly so, of the external philosophies that may come in and interfere with their cultural norms, their family customs and traditions, and that's completely respectable. So I remember the first the first workshop that I gave. It was a teacher's workshop in one of the local schools. It was an international school, but it was teachers from around Kuwait would come to there for workshops and presentations. And I proposed a workshop which would eventually become part of the One Pointed Mind workshops.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about the integration of meditative practices into the classroom. What's going on physiologically, neurologically, cognitively, spiritually wasn't so much of a conversation there. It was more about what does it really look like in the classroom and what's happening psychosomatically, and why does that matter, and how does this impact learning? Well, I would obviously want to integrate meditative practices and what it looked like in my classroom. So the front row were covered Muslim women. Just there was about, I think there was like 4 of them side by side, and covered in the sense where some Muslim women will just wear the headscarf or the hijab. Others would have a veil, and then others are completely with a black shawl of sorts over the entire face. They were fully covered.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, this is the test to see whether or not I have enough understanding of the Muslim culture and the essence of what it is that they're trying to do with their prayer. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to do with meditative practices. I personally found a major overlap in what their intention is behind doing their prayer 5 times a day. What do they get from it?
Right.
And then if the students were to do not prayer practices in the classroom, but if we were to do not even similar practices that also can be categorized as meditative techniques or meditative practices, what will they experience? And then within 30 seconds of the talk, they were nodding their heads. Like, yeah, you got it. You're right on track. Because I went right at it, because the question was, what are you, white boy, in our country teaching our kids to do these things who are Muslim children? Like this isn't Buddhism. This isn't Hinduism. We're not interested in none of this stuff, So I had to tread very, very lightly, and I learned a lot about teaching and a lot about the practice of meditation and the depths of it, and where it can be seen across cultures and traditions relatively seamlessly at the deepest roots. And if you can go at the depth and you go at the root of things, you'll find the truths, as far as I'm concerned, and from my own personal experiences.
Well, that's awesome, Steve. One, you respected the culture, so you educated yourself about the culture. And this shows up in any schools. There are so many different cultures that are coming to the schools that when you introduce a mindful practice, you have to be respectful of the different diverse cultures that are showing up. And so what I hear you saying is you were able to speak about the benefits of meditation to the point where they really understand the root of it, and that it is just beneficial for the body to become aware. How many times a day do you think the body should become aware of its existence?
5 at least.
5. Yeah, there you go. So, how do you cultivate well-being through regulation, Steve? Because this is a regulation. This is how you're doing it 5 times a day. How do you cultivate well-being when you're doing that?
Well, there's a cognitive and it's complicated, eh? There's a biological, there's a cognitive, and there's a spiritual aspect. So psychosomatically, we're changing neural processing. We know this, right? Anyone with even a cursory understanding of the research of meditative practices know that there is a neurological change and shift that's happening within the brain. The entire endocrine system is then calibrating and functioning at a different rate. Cognitively, a result of the biological shifts is a cognitive shift, but also a result of the cognitive shift is there then a biological shift. I see this as an interdynamic system between the mind and the body. What's going on? They feed each other. They're not interdependent. They're interconnected and interdynamic. But then once you start getting deeper into the practices, you will allow for the awareness of a stillness from which a different state of experience arises.
Right.
However somebody wants to call it, they can call it. I don't know. I tend to try to tread lightly here, because there isn't always the room for the conversation around spirituality and spiritualism.
Right.
Sometimes it's simply, listen, I don't need it. I just need to know the science of what's happening, what's going on in my body, and I'm good. From there on, I'm in. I find Sam Harris is an interesting case in here, where he's a scientist through and through. And for him, it's not about a religious experience or a spiritual experience. It's just simply slowing down and feeling better, So it depends on how you want to look at it, really. But it is a full regulation that occurs when you
Right.
go through the processes.
Let's break that down a little bit. You said psychosomatic. For some people, they don't know what that means. What does psychosomatic mean?
So psychosomatic is the idea that something is happening within the mind, and therefore the body responds because it's happening in the mind. Not that it's happening on the external world, but it's happening within the cognitive world, within the psyche, within the thinking mind. So when we're going through the process of bringing our attention to the breathing, the mind awareness, actually awareness it comes out of the mind. It's
Mm,
the thinking world. From my experience, there's the reality of presence and the feeling that occurs with a presence, and then thinking. And there's two distinctly different experiences. Uh, if I can give a quick analogy, it's one of the best that I've ever experienced. My wife wouldn't think so, but it's clear. We were on our way to her mother's. We were back for summer vacation. We were in a car, or a rental car, I think, and we were trying to determine how we were going to coordinate where we were going to stay when we arrived in the States for the first couple of days. We're getting an Airbnb. Let's stay with your mother for a couple of days, get our bags arranged, blah blah blah, and then it'll
so
be
this
easy.
is you returning back to the United States after years of being overseas. That's what you're talking about, right?
I don't know if it. I don't know if no. It was during one of our summer vacations
Okay, got
coming
you.
back. Yeah, because we came back every summer for summer vacation. So
Mhm.
while we were in the car trying to contemplate what we were going to do, um, I hope I'm not digging myself in a hole, but there were family issues that going on within the
Yeah,
family, and it was a situation where it was like, okay, is that what we want? Is that what we don't want? Okay,
yeah.
I'll make sure my mother-in-law doesn't watch this.
It's
So
normal life.
okay, it's normal, but
It's
yeah,
normal life.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
We
totally,
forgive you,
totally.
Steve. Just be
All right.
you.
You
You
can
are
forgive me. I just want to make sure she's okay. But anyway, so we're driving down the road, and we thought, okay, well, it would be way easier since she's picking us up from the airport that we just stay at her house that night.
right.
Right. Okay. While contemplating the reality of staying at her house that night, just for one night, my wife, I was driving, and I could feel something in her. If you've been with someone long enough, like, okay, there's something's not quite right with the person sitting next to me. My wife, like, you feel it. And
Yeah.
I looked over, and her face was red and blotchy, and I was looking at her, and she says, I don't feel so good. And it was not okay. It was immediately clear things were not okay. So I pulled the car over on the, like, wherever we were. It was just an immediate pull the car over, take your breath, connect. We don't have to stay with your mom's. She broke out in hives within about 5 seconds of the reality that she was going to be staying with her mother. That's
Mm,
psychosomatic. That's just a thought. And the
yeah.
entire body, the entire fight and flight response went into overdrive.
Yeah.
And it was an indication that we have something going on within the body. There's a trauma that's related to an experience that all it takes is a thought about it, and the body goes through the lived experience.
Right.
So we had to say, okay, we're not staying at the house. We're not staying there. We'll figure it out, something out, whatever. We'll stay in the White House. I'll work it out. So whatever. But anyway, so then when we were able to get out of that mindset, the body went back to normal. The hives went away. And I'm serious. It was within about a 45-second process that she peaked and then came back out again. And the body responded in real time as if the experience was real.
I totally understand what you're saying because it's happened to me many times.
Mm.
That reaction to a thought and how my mind was processing and how my body reacted to it.
Yeah. So if you take it on the opposite end, if you're putting yourself into that state of stillness regularly, you're
Mm,
coming out of the thinking mind, the subtle fears, the subtle resentments, the subtle angers, the subtle ambitions, the things that
mm,
tear us down day to day. You're coming out of that just for a moment and
right.
coming into a state of equilibrium and balance. And it allows the body then to regulate itself. Goes back to the other question about regulation.
Totally love that.
So
Totally
super
love it.
interesting. Super interesting.
So, without further ado, we're going to talk about what you're doing in the schools and what are some of the challenges that you're facing pertaining to self-regulation and trying to implement this into the schools.
Um, That's another hard one. It's a tough question because there's, on one side, we have many people in education that are doing some really incredible work every day for children, to help them understand who they are better, um, and to educate the kids. There's a huge movement in education now for mindful schools and mindfulness and whatnot, and they do great work. Um, but there's still, I think that there's still a general lack of understanding of the depths of what, at least what I'm trying to go after, and that isn't necessarily anyone's fault per se. It's just that we need more people who have had peak experiences, more people who have gone into the other side, as you and I were talking about earlier, and accessing a different realm of reality and experience. Also reality, but at least experience, because I don't know how much it's real because we're making sense of it out of our mind, but at least the experience itself of deep meditative practices. And when you get, from my point of view, once you get into that realm and you start to tap into it, words like mindfulness don't do it for me anymore.
Right.
It just doesn't quite touch it. Mindfulness is about mind and
Right.
thinking and engaging, which I'm down with. I get it 100%. You know, that also is somewhat synonymous with one pointed attention, one pointedness, but not completely.
Right.
Um, Mindfulness implies that there's a cognitive process that's occurring. In meditation, the only experience that you're seeking is no mind. Actually, it isn't engaging mind. You're lost, you're gone, the mind is gone. Kind of, it's not
Right.
gone because it's still there chattering away in the background. In my experience, but without this understanding, the conversations within education are surface. And educators are so inundated with the next phase, the next fad, the next trend, the next integration of technology or education, or literacy or language development, and so on and so forth. Like if you come out teachers and you say, okay, then this is the next thing we're going to do now. We're going to focus on meditation for kids. They're going to say, okay, well, this week we're going to focus on meditation for kids because next week I got to work on this, and then next week we're going to integrate that. Next thing I have to integrate that. Only from the inside can you see as a teacher that it's utterly relentless. Utterly
Mm.
relentless. What teachers have to continue to learn, continue to engage. That's not even mentioning the subject matter.
Mhm.
I was a high school English teacher, and we wanted to bring in new literature this
Mhm.
past year. Like new literature. Okay, cool. But now I need to read 5 or 6 new novels to integrate and create lessons and units around those and align those with whatever wave of cultural improvement we're seeking this year, which there's plenty of cultural improvement that education is seeking to target as well. So it spreads so thin
Mhm.
that it's super difficult to be able to integrate these ideas. The only way that you can do it, from my point of view, is that actually this becomes something that you live. So within the one point of my workshops, the first 3 weeks are actually targeting the teachers in their own practice. It's not even really getting into, we touch on it philosophically why we might want to do it for kids, but it's more about we're understanding biologically, cognitively, spiritually, even what is going on through these processes. How does the change happen? And then how can we develop this for the teachers themselves? And then week 4, we're starting to talk about what do we how what does this look like in the classroom, and what are the different techniques and practices that teachers could engage in that don't even look like meditation. It's just an opportunity for one pointed attention. It's not even mindfulness.
Yeah.
Mindfulness isn't relevant. It's relevant, but it's not the word. Again, I don't get stuck on it. Words are pointers. And for me, I get it, but it just doesn't quite get it. It's about putting the kids in a one pointed focus whenever possible. And then you can be mindful in that state. Mindfulness is secondary to a
Mhm.
meditative state.
Okay. I kind of I can try to relate to it because my son is a highly sensitive empath, so
Mm,
he picks up everything. I can't even just smile to my side or off to the side and pretend I'm okay. He
mm,
picks it up because he's feeling that energy. So what I started doing was I started grounding myself every morning and just ground. And that's what he picks up now. So, from a teacher's perspective, if a teacher can practice this
Yeah.
before they go into the classroom and they are grounding themselves and their energy is grounded and all the other energies that are showing up because kids are so overstimulated right
Yeah.
now.
So
If,
overstimulated.
yeah, so if they can ground, then that's what the kids are going to pick up. They're going
You
to pick
feel it,
up.
and you feel it when you walk into the space.
Yeah.
I I like the phrase that's coming to mind, as within, so without.
Love it.
And so when you're creating your classroom environment, when you're when you are coming from that space, and when you are grounded as often as you can be, because we are all humans that
Yeah.
didn't get enough sleep, or just got enough sleep but just wake up and I'm in a funk and I don't know what's going on, and whatever, it is what it is. It just, well, I shouldn't have had that extra cup of coffee. Now I'm a little bit more jittery in the mind and agitated than I maybe could have been. And, not enough water. Who knows why we might be in the state that you're in? The food, the dinner that you ate the night before was too high in gluten. So therefore you're having an unconscious response to the gluten that you ate. Who knows? But if you can if nothing else, what you're saying there is dead on. Like, I've had teachers coming in and parents, and it was very common in my teaching career where they would come into the room and they would comment on the fact that it was different.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a different space.
Yeah.
And it was one of the things that I did first and foremost when I came into it, because I was in 5 schools over the 12 years and traveling to different countries, that you always set your space up, man. Set your space up, get it in a balanced place. And then the action, I don't know, I have a good Buddhist friend, and we were talking about this in the classroom, and I was saying about the energy of the room, the energy of the space, but he's also very scientific. And he goes, yeah, I don't know how much I get into that whole energy of the space kind of thing. I was like, that's cool. I get it. No worries. It's all good. But from my point of view, there's definitely a vibration in a space. Everything is vibration. So it's not even debate. It's a fact, right? So it's just, it's the quality of the vibration. And if we even touch on that just for a quick second, the cognitive, that it appears to me that the body and the mind are a result of a vibratory state, a vibratory quality. And we're in those funks, our vibes are off. It's a lower frequency. Maybe it's a lower frequency. I sense it's a lower frequency. And then the higher frequencies, you're experiencing different cognitive states.
Yeah.
And then when you're in that, it impacts the room. And you know what I mean? Like those there's, like you're saying, there's so much communication that's happening between us that isn't spoken. It's not even seen on the face, it's felt. And
Yeah.
the kids know, they feel it. And then when you're inviting them into that space, they change along with it. They come in. The space actually holds its own as people come in and as people go. They impact the space as well, for sure, right? So calibrating and keeping things in flow is as best you can is important, but it's contagious and it's very, very, very powerful.
So as a life coach, we say we're setting the container. We're setting that container for the client to feel safe, to be vulnerable, to be open. Because when you're relaxed and you feel safe, it goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where the person is safe, the needs are being met, they're covered, they're fed, they're in that space. So when you set up your classroom, you're setting a safety container for them to be safe, to be authentic and who they are. So that's beautiful, beautifully said the way you put it, about establishing that one point focus in the classroom and preparing the classroom before the kids even walk into the door. Sorry.
And when they feel safe, it's easier then to be one pointed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about in education, like the actual experience of learning in that classroom, we've all been there. It sucks half the time.
Yeah.
Right. And then, probably more than half the time it sucks because it's difficult. It's challenging. I don't want to be here. It's boring material, whatever it might be. But I'm taking a test and I haven't even taken the test yet. And just the same as like, okay, well, we're not even staying at the house, but hives are breaking out. We're not even taking the test yet, but it's all out of whack. right?
Right.
So when we're getting to the point of saying, okay, we can be one pointed, that brings the mind focus into the present moment, where fear, anger, resentment, and all those things literally cannot exist if you're
Mm-hmm.
focused in the present moment, if the mind is still.
Right.
We have minds, they're going to kick in, we're going to experience anxiety and whatever. Okay, that's fine. We're all human beings. But what do we do when we're observing the fact that that is actually currently happening? When
Mm-hmm.
you enter the state of meditation regularly, it's like, I like the analogy of taking that pebble and throwing it on the still pond. You'll see the
Mm-hmm.
smallest pebble, but if it's a storm and it's raging and you throw that pebble out there, you're not going to even notice anything at all. So you get that equilibrium of the meditative experience as much as possible, and it smooths things out. And then when something pops in, it's very, very prevalent.
Well, you talk about the first four section of your workshop where you're preparing the teacher,
Mm.
right? At what point are the teachers now presenting a practice into the classroom? Is it the fourth or fifth week of this workshop? And how many sections of the workshops are there?
There's six modules currently as it's structured. It's 6 weeks. I
Mhm.
recommend 6 weeks in the way it is set. When we come into to work with schools, we have 6 modules of material that we can make into 4 modules, 3 modules, whatever. Um, but week one is it's philosophically based. We're really looking into the psychology of attention and emotion. What's going on actually cognitively, neurologically, and intellectually. What are we talking about philosophically, right? And then we play with those ideas within the mind to create a framework. And then we start to work on the 4-minute meditation, 10-minute meditations, deep dive meditations within a couple of weeks to get really down into the meditative experience. We have mandala drawings for the teachers to work. Carl Jung was a famous psychologist back in the early 1900s. He himself used mandalas as a meditation. Adult coloring books are great. You know what I mean? That's really, it's kind of what we're doing for the most part, using those as a meditation. But then, I mean, teachers can integrate these practices. If you're a teacher listening, like, do it tomorrow. Like, you don't, right? Just go for it. Just kind of like what we're doing in the course is looking at different types of practices. Like, I have practices in my classroom. Like, I have like a kinetic sand, and like, they're actually MacBook
Mhm.
Pro covers for the
Okay.
boxes for the MacBook Pros, and I just put kinetic sand in there with a couple of little toys. And I had 6 sections in the room, and each section had a little box of kinetic sand. That's just something to ground the kids, to
Mhm.
make them present, that they can keep their hand in there and play with it while they're actually watching the lesson. That's an example. You can
Mhm.
actually then we go through different meditative techniques. There's practices that they can actually engage in. That 1 minute breath meditation is great. It depends on
Mhm.
the kids, the grade level. You're dealing with 7-year-olds or you're dealing with 17-year-olds. It's a different tone. It's a different
Yeah.
conversation. You know what I mean? Yeah.
You know, when Duncan was in elementary, he's 17 now, so that was when he was what, 6 or 7. The Toledo tribe, they still do it to this day. They start in the gym, and
Mm,
they start with their tribal drumming and singing the prayer and blessing of the day, and they
nice.
get everyone together in that being present and learning that everybody is one, and we need to be aware of each other's feelings and so forth. And so they start that. So in the classroom, is that something that you would recommend when when the kids come in? How do we get them to be get them to that one point focus? How do we get them when they first walk into the classroom?
I think it's unique to each, and it should be.
Yeah.
It depends on who the teacher is. Depends on the relationship. It depends on the subject matter. If it's a music classroom in your music room and you got drums, then roll.
Yeah.
That's incredible, super powerful. We were talking earlier about the Grafton Peace Pagoda here in upstate New York, the Japanese Buddhist temple, and I was lucky they invited me in to have a prayer with them, and they use drums, very powerful.
Mhm.
Very powerful. It's
Yeah.
awesome. And then the song and the harmonics of the prayer themselves. If I brought a drum out in my classroom, the kids would be like, yo, this is a little not expected, and it wouldn't be authentic, probably. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
would work. So actually, a lot of the practices that I would do with my students, I liked being coy with them, and actually would sort of be like, you know what, I need to sit down, I need to take a breath. You know what I mean? Can anybody else, just, you guys with me? Let me just I'm just gonna take a quick minute. Let's turn the lights off, turn your chairs to the front of the room. We're just gonna sit down for a quick second. Let's just stop. Let's just all just slow down just for a minute, you know? It wasn't a big conversation about this and about that and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter, man. We're here for we're here for English. Right. We're not here for a cultural necessarily, you know what I mean? Like those conversations want to come up, that's cool. But let's remember what we're here for. We're here for learning. We're here for English, in my case, you know, or you're here for PE, or you're here for whatever PE class. You can do yoga and movement. There's anything wherever the teacher's inclined to share. And I think that's the power of working with the teachers. That's at the start, to find out who they are, find out what practices work for them, because there's a range of practices that we introduce. Which ones do you feel work for you the most, and then we then take it from there, and then build and share with us. Tell us what you're doing. You know, let's create a community about this. Let's share. You know, it's not a secret, for sure.
Yeah, well, that you just pointed something out. I was about to say one size doesn't fit all. No. And so you mentioned about the goal of one point in mind and one point in focus. I'm sorry. But I only heard a couple of goals. So can you repeat again the goals that you have intended for this workshop? What are your goals for creating this workshop and for implementing it into the schools?
Well, if I were to speak plainly, my goal is to evolution, like education needs to evolve. Yeah. And I'm looking for a revolution in education, trying to build an army of people that are going forward shamelessly to say, this is where we're coming from, and this is what we need to do. Because I mean, most agree that are in the field of education. We know anytime I've shared these workshops, I've gotten the feedback is just incredible. It's very, very positive. So the goal is to revolutionize education. But if you're looking at if it could get some tangible ideas out, I think developing wisdom, developing creativity, and emotional intelligence, emotional balance within the students. Wisdom is the idea of skillfully applying knowledge to solve a problem.
Right.
Wisely. And you do this in a sense where you're helping the world become better. You're not becoming part of the problem. And you're helping people, you're helping animals. And these are new ways to solve, in many ways, our old problems. Mm-hmm. It's the skillful use of knowledge. It's not to acquire knowledge, it's to cultivate wisdom. Creativity is then doing this in a novel way, in a way that is maybe perhaps unseen, or something that's been done in the past, and we can apply it here skillfully, creatively. And from my experience, creativity, at least as a songwriter and as an artist myself, I see creativity comes from the stillness. It arises. I become aware of what is considered art, right? Da Vinci became aware of something, and then what he presented was considered genius. But it was something that he had access to, that he tapped into, and that he was a vehicle from which and through which information traveled. Mm-hmm. And he did it that way. And then to obviously emotional intelligence is if we're not targeting the cultivation of emotional well-being within the kids, then we're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit about the meditations and the there are different types of meditation, right? So can you tell us a little bit about the different types that are out there that you would recommend to bring into the schools?
Well, what we did today, we did the breath awareness, simple breath awareness, and simple body awareness. We paired those two together. If anytime maybe we should define meditation.
Yes, let's do it.
That might help a little. But let's do it. And I'm going to speak from my own personal point of view. It's a state of being. Meditation is a state. It's not something that you do. It's something that you are, or you're not. We categorize it and we see somebody sitting down, Indian style, lotus posture, whatever it may be. He's meditating or she's meditating. Okay. But the way that the term used to be used was they meditate on a contemplation, like, meditations of so-and-so. That's the way. So it's in that sense, it might actually be more toward the ideas of mindfulness. But what it is, from my point of view, is it's the one pointed focus completely on a single point.
Mm-hmm.
When we call meditation, it's when often you can use a mantra meditation where your attention is focused on a word or a phrase, a prayer, something that is happening internally within the space, within the void of stillness. There's something that arises from the stillness. It's a sound, right? So that's the mantra itself. So then you're focusing on the mantra. When you do that, that's a mantra meditation. And there's plenty of mantras from different traditions that you have access to be able to use, and use prayers, use whatever it is that you may want to. But it's something that you want to bring about a desired state of being, typically calm, peace, balanced, something of the sort. So there's the breath, there's the body, there's the mantra, there's japa. I'm going to be working this week on trying to develop a jogging meditation. I was going to call it a japa jog. Japa is meditation in action, JAPA. So there's the beads, the prayer beads, right? You go over, you're listening to the mantra, but you're taking a walk while you're working the beads. This is many traditions use these worry beads or prayer beads, whatever they may be called. I hear the mantra within, I go to the next bead. I hear it again, I go to the next bead. I hear it again, I go to the next bead. And I'm conditioning my waking consciousness with my eyes open to be able to stay still inside and focused on the mantra while the outside world happens. I'm the center of the cyclone.
That's beautiful.
Just as I'm aware of the outside world, I'm aware of the thinking. I'm not the thinking. I'm not the mind. The mind happens. Thinking happens. I'm the vantage point that's aware of it. Our normal zombified state of the human condition is to be in the mind completely. And then we're simply navigating the world in mind. There's no even awareness of the fact that there is a distinction between the fact that mind and thinking happens, but you don't have to adhere to it. It's just happening, just like the rain, it happens. Just like the breath, it happens, right? There's others, I guess, but most of them I would say typically center around those ideas.
Beautiful. Let's talk about the breath, though. Some people are always confused about whether they are breathing in and out of their nose or their mouth. What's the importance of either?
Nose is typically discussed as a calming breath.
Okay.
The mouth is a stressed breath. There's also, so we have the nose and we have the mouth, but we also have the chest and we have the belly.
Right.
If you're watching somebody, or if you're in a state of stress or anxiety, or if you were to observe somebody in a state of stress or anxiety, when they breathe, the breath is up in the chest.
Right.
It's up here. That's where the angst is, because the diaphragm in the belly is so locked up that the breath moves then up into the chest. The proper breath that you would want to seek is that if you could put your hand on your belly, it's not sexy, but when you're breathing, the inhalation, the belly goes out. Exhalation, the belly goes in. The belly expands and contracts like a balloon.
Right.
So through the nose, you can get a more calming experience. There are times when I'm trying to hammer home a breath meditation, I'll take it in, whoa, pull, and then it's really alerting to the body, and it really activates the body. But you're trying to actually create you're jarring yourself in a sense.
Right.
This is a higher. It's not. I'm going to say higher level, as in like you need to be at a certain level to do this type of meditation. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's going to be more intense. It's more of an intense breathing. Depends on what you want. I have parent meetings. Sometimes I'll go into a parent conference. You're going to be here for a few hours. I'm tired and I'm worn out. I need oxygen and I need to get going. I'm in. I'm pulling in and I'm letting go. But I'm not doing this to create anxiety. I'm actually doing this to rid anxiety.
Right.
But then I'll stop and slow down with the balance, the bringing it back down again. Whether you want to breathe out of your nose or your mouth during the meditation, try both.
Yeah,
Feel what
this
you're
is so
called for,
important. This is so important, especially when you have a child that you have to send them to the source room. They call it the source room here when they get in
Mhm.
trouble.
Mm.
When you send them to that remedial room, how are you helping them reset? What I'm seeing, they're just sitting them, putting them in front of a computer. Okay, do your work. We're just going to watch you. But
Or
that's
not watch them, then sit on your own computer.
right. We're not allowing them to reset by doing a meditative focus practice of just breath, and just in 1 minute or 2 minutes we can get them to reset and actually even probably go back to class. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the things I really like. Real quick before we go on to the last phase of this is you mentioned posture when we started. Posture is also an important part of this practice, right?
Yeah. When I'm working with the kids, I said it at the start of this meditation, we're not trying to be soldiers. We're sitting up, but we're not soldiers, right? We're not
Mhm.
stiff, but we are alert, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes I'll see this is any teacher knows this posture. You know what I mean? Like, all right, let's sit up here. Okay, let's meditate. Like, like, no, come on, man, let's get up. We're here for school. We're here for learning. We got to be awake and we got to be alert, right? So get up.
Right.
So actually, what you're doing, that's actually, some say, the most important step in meditation is finding the seat,
Mm.
because everything else after that, it's just going to take care of itself.
Oh,
It's like when you're jogging, the hardest part is putting on your clothes and the shoes. That's it. Once that's done, you're in. It's just
yeah.
taking that step. So the posture, I find, is a trigger, and it's important. Um, so they sit up, and there's always a question of, like, where do my arms go? I just dangle the arms by the side and just bring them up at the elbows and just drop them on the lap. It's easy.
Mm.
Just flop them there. But when you have the body straight, erect, the diaphragm now is going to open up. The belly isn't crunched and
Mm-hmm.
collapsed. It's open, which then allows the belly to open up, the hips to open up. And then there's the conversations about the chakric energy up and down the spine. I think that's relatively evident through science that we have a lot going on up in the spinal column. You don't need to be a Hindi shaman to consider the idea that, like, our spinal cord and our spinal column and the movement of energy is important, right?
Yep.
Their belief is that if you get the spine straight, and actually if you move your awareness up and down the spine with inhalations and exhalations, then you actually are doing something more subtle that's
Right.
more difficult to measure scientifically. And it's actually one of the areas of my interest in the PhD program I'm in, is finding out how can we quantify actually what is going on through
Mm-hmm.
that type of meditation. That's another type of meditation, just chakric meditation, moving through the 7 points in the body and navigating those as you work your way up and down the 7 points. That's another beautiful meditation.
Incredible, Steve. You're doing some really good work out there. And teachers, if there are any teachers are listening, um, I do believe you said you teach us online as well, so you don't have to physically be there to teach, right, Steve? So this
Yeah.
workshop.
Yep, the onepointedmind.net. It's a self-paced 6-week program. There's a couple of options. One option is that you can do it self-paced on your own. The other option is that you actually have a coach along with you through the 6 weeks, so that we can go through your process journals. We discuss what's going on within your weekly experience. Where are you at with the meditations? We can modify meditative practices and have conversations about them. It's so important to have
Mm-hmm.
the conversations, particularly if you don't have someone around you. It's just the community and the conversation takes things to a whole nother level. So those are options. And then as we're coming into the schools, often when you're working with a school, you don't have 6 weeks necessarily. You might have a couple of days. So then we can combine the modules into a bit of a more fast-paced program, if you will. But the support is continuously there.
So how can they reach you, Steve? You have we gave you the website, but how can they reach you otherwise? I can type it in here, I think.
Yeah, well, Steve Lawrence, you got the One Pointed Mind on. Those are both in LinkedIn. You'll see me. If you'll see me, Stephen Lawrence, you'll find. Even if you search the One Pointed Mind in LinkedIn, it's probably the easier way because there's more than one Steve Lawrence. But the links will be there. Instagram, we got the One Pointed Mind on Instagram. We got a YouTube channel. A lot of this is raw. Like, I just retired from education last year, so this summer. So for the past few months, we've been really dialing in to be able to focus on getting things where they need to be, and the course is active, currently running. But it was in terms of like the actual outreach and the structures of the program itself, we're just starting. It's super exciting, and it's an interesting process to move from the educational world of being teachers to the entrepreneurial, or at least like getting into the social media. I so don't want to be that Instagram guy. You know what I mean? I really don't want to be that, but people are like, well, you gotta have to get out there a little bit. But it is what it is. It's fun. It's exciting. It's neat. So it's all good.
You're tapping into your creativity in another side, digitally, and so I love it. You're doing some really good work. First of all, congratulations on making it to. I think you said 15 years of teaching. Was it 15?
It was 12. Yeah, it was
Okay,
12.
12 years. Congratulations on doing 12 years of teaching, and now you're tapping into the other side where you're creating and providing. You're still caring for the kids, and you're providing this beautiful structure to help not only the teachers but also the kids. So
Thanks.
thank you for doing that. I have a really silly question to ask you. What are three of your powerful tools of resiliency in just toughing it through things when things go rough or get
Mm. I think the default is the breath.
the breath?
Yeah, the breath is the go-to. It gets me out of the head. It gets me connected. So I find, I think breath is the key. Body is the gate. So you connect with the breath. You use the breath to activate the body. And then if you can increase the rate of breathing, increase the oxygen within the body, the brain's going to change. Alkalization within the endocrine system is going to change, and the body's going to be more tangible. It's going to be more felt. And then once you hit the state of the body, breath is the key, body is the gate. You go through the body into space, into the void, into stillness. That's, from my point of view, that's the path you take. So there's that. Exercise, I have learned to appreciate a great deal. For me personally, it burns off that excess whatever.
Yeah.
You know, if it's ambition that's just doing my head in, that it just won't shut up. You know, I can take the jog, and it sort of burns that extra energy, that sort of cleans the gutters, if you will. You know,
Gosh.
and then probably, I don't know, I'd say sleep. Last night I slept 12 hours. I slept from 8:30 to 8:30. I just did. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's super important for me. It's just one of those things. Health, hydration, water. You know.
I said 3, boy.
I don't know, but like, but really though, like all of them matter. It's like really, if you're like out of sorts, it's not necessarily external world's fault that you're out of sorts, or that you don't have strength, or you don't have what it is that you think you might need, or you don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you? Like, these are actions that you need to take. You know, too much alcohol weakens you out. You don't have the willpower. You know, there's stuff like that. And I'm not saying don't drink, but just you know how you feel the next day if you drink too much. You're not there.
Well, Steve, we're going to have you back. I would love to have you back for one of our meditation Mondays. You're just a wealth of knowledge, and we can't finish everything within 60 minutes. But we would like to end this session with a small clip of the deep dive meditation. And I want to talk about this meditation because Steve recommended this to me 2 years ago when I was really going through a very, very, very tumultuous, traumatic event. And Steve was like, he was very gentle. Said, Aletha, just do this every day. And I did it every day. And I would do it before I would go face that event. And this breathing meditation really, really grounded me and gave me that emotional intelligence. It calmed my mind down. It gave me that ability to really tap into that intelligence instead of having the anxiety cloud me and distract me and make me focus on the anxiety instead of what I truly needed to focus on. So I mean, I think I've thanked you enough, Steve, but I really appreciate you introducing this to me. So without further ado, Steve, if you want to say one final thing before we end with this meditation, what would you like to say to everyone?
The only thing that came to mind is how much I love you.
I love you too, honey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's do it. Let's watch this and participate in it, okay? Because it really, really works. I'm gonna figure this out here.
Pull in, fully in. And let it go. Keep this pace. Fully in. Belly, chest, head. And let it go. Fully in. We're oxidizing the body. Removing the acidity, removing the carbon dioxide. Activating critical brain centers. Beyond the comfort zone. Keep going. Fully in. Fully in. And let it go. As deep as you can go. Surrender. Just observe. It's as intense as you want it to be. Like all relationships. The more you give, the more you'll get. Keep going. Keep going. Continue. And 10, 9, 8. If you're feeling lightheaded, that's fine. You're completely safe. Nothing to fear. Tingling of the body, sensations in the hands, the fingertips, the extremities, the lips. Tingling, that's good. You're where you need to be. Pull in, deeply in, keep going. And 2, 1, final in, fully out. Now fully in. And hold. Pressurize the chest. You're comfortable. You're comfortable. But beyond the comfort zone. Hold. Hold this breath for as long as you can. Let the body relax. You're safe. In space. Hold the breath. Take an inventory of the face, the scalp, the shoulders, elbows, hands, relaxed. Chest and belly relaxed. Hips, thighs, knees, calves, ankles, toes. The body has everything it needs. Beyond the mind. There's just stillness. And when you can no longer hold the breath, when the body knows it's time to let it go, not the mind, the body. Beyond the chatter, beyond the noise, and the space. When it's time to let it go, let it go. And hold the exhalation for as long as you can. This is critically important. We're resetting the body, resetting the hormones, resetting the brain, endocrine system, sympathetic, parasympathetic. And when you can no longer hold that exhalation, just let the body breathe and stay down in the body, in the space.
Wow, that was beautiful.
Thank you for playing that. You know, I use my guided meditations all the time still. It's crazy. It's
I
interesting.
I find that to be a beautiful one, especially when I just feel like I need to move energy and I can't dance.
Mm.
I go back to that meditation. So thank you for having that out there. That link for that meditation was also in the write up. So if you guys can't find it, please just comment in the section on Facebook or on YouTube, and we will get that link to you. And Steve, thank you so much for coming on and spending this wonderful 1 hour with me and expressing the things that you're doing for the kids and the teachers out there.
My pleasure. Let's do it again soon, yeah?
Most definitely. And without further ado, guys, you have a happy Friday.
That's an
All right,
inside joke for everybody.
you guys have a happy Friday. All right. Take care.
Be well, everyone.